Welcome back to part 4 of 4 in our Square Peg Round Hole series. Today, we're going to talk about the literacy gap. We touched on literacy a little bit in blog 3 as an example, but let's talk about it more in blog 4. I'm Kelly Ryder, the founder of English Learner Portal, and I am sharing information with you about systemic functional linguistics and a way of thinking that would fit better to a lot of what's going on in our schools today. As I said, systemic functional linguistics and an approach as such with functional language planning is a better fit for today's situation and today's classroom expectations. I'm going to stand by it. Let's talk about literacy. As I've been saying in the blogs, a lot of what comes into the blog are things that I'm experiencing or conversations that I'm having when I'm visiting schools or planning with teachers or doing coaching cycles with teachers. And these are some of the things that come up that I know are not unique to that school or that teacher. Because as I work with multiple schools in different districts, I hear the same messages. And this is why it just weighed heavy on my heart to start talking about systemic functional linguistics and getting people to understand and be more informed about functional language planning, because it would take so much stress off of everyone. So let's look at it from the literacy side today. Here are questions that I've been asking in the last couple weeks. So in many cases, districts are implementing different publishers, but similar products where they're pretty scripted and laid out step by step. The materials are already there for you. The teacher script is there for you. You just follow along, turn the page, follow along. You have the slides, you have the handouts. It's a wonderful time saver to have all of those pieces at your fingertips. Sometimes I get lost in the clicking around and navigating it all online because there is so much that they're offering. But here's where I'm finding some bumps in the road. Right? Even the best laid plans can't work for the incredibly wide range of students that will walk in the door in front of you. Our publishers write to a particular avatar, imaginary student, but you have so many different students that are coming to you. And what I'm seeing, and I've alluded to it in past blogs, is that we are teaching the curriculum, but there are moments when the expectation of the curriculum is not a match for where our student is developmentally, whether it be in their literacy skills or in their language development. I am a firm believer in keeping students engaged in grade level content instruction with grade level expectations, because they are age appropriate, grade appropriate thinkers. But we have to remember that literacy and language are a factor in that too. And when their literacy level or their language development level isn't at the same level as their native speaking peers, we can't ignore it. Just because it's not written into the curriculum doesn't mean we can skip by it. And so here are some things that have come up that I've asked. What are we doing for students when the grade level curriculum is not comprehensible? So the higher up in grades we go, the more and more this happens, because we're using more complex language. We assume more background knowledge. We're getting into more complex ideas and higher level thinking. So it happens more as students get older. So let's say I'm a fifth grader and I'm a beginning English speaker, and I have literacy skills in my first language that are age appropriate, but because my language development hasn't caught up with my native language development, I still struggle a little bit with the literacy of comprehending and being able to produce on grade level reading and writing, because I'm still a beginner in developing the English piece. So my teacher is going through this beautiful curriculum and putting up those well done slides and printing out those handouts. I'd say the same thing for middle school, for high school, right? If I know that my students' literacy level is not a match for that handout, what do I do? Right? What am I doing for that student? If I know that it will be a real stretch for my third grade beginning English speaker with interrupted education to be able to read this text, or even if it's a read aloud, to be able to listen and comprehend enough of that text to be able to do something with it later. If their listening comprehension isn't there yet with English, what are we doing? Right? What are we doing when we hand students an assignment and the prompt and the organizers and the text on the page is above their developmental level at this moment? Right? This refers back to the previous blog where I said, can you take this assignment and take it with you with the ELD teacher and let them finish it for you? Right? If we continue to push to finish an assignment that is not a developmental fit for that student, then are we really getting anything out of that time? Where if we go back and think about how we can make some of this more developmentally appropriate in the beginning, then we won't need to spend all of our ELD time trying to teach and reteach and rework something and then not ever get to the language instruction. Again, my question at the bottom, depending on what curriculum you're using, what are the options? What do students have to read when they read independently below grade level? Do they have time for structured independent reading or reading instruction that's at their level? When does that happen? These are questions I've been asking because I'm not living in those curriculum worlds every day. I don't know all the ins and outs, so I ask a lot of questions. And sometimes whoever I'm talking to has a perfectly good answer and says, we have these books we can use, we have these materials we can go to, this is what we do for that, and then I am educated and comfortable and happy. But sometimes there's not an answer. So I've worked with a few people recently where the answer is there's a reader, but that reader's too hard or too high of a level for where that student is right now. And so there's not anything that they can read independently. They're not going to grow. What do we do then, right? What's our plan? There has to be another plan for students who need the language development and who are closing that literacy gap. We will not close the literacy gap if we don't teach anything in the gap, right? This is where our multiple people come into play. And I know it's a soapbox, and I know you can tell that I'm only going to say this if it's something I have seen in lots of places, right? Pretty much everywhere I've been this spring is struggling with the same questions. So what are we going to do, right? What are we going to do? It takes me back to what we talked about in blog 3, where if we just give our student, our little tree, water, here's your grade level curriculum, grow. It's going to work for some students. It's not going to work for all students. Some trees need a little more care and TLC and intervention. They might need a little fertilizer. They might need better soil. They might need a little compost, right? They might need a grow lamp or a sunnier spot or move them away from bigger trees, right? There are things we need to do for them. And so I go back to what I said in blog 3, which is how can the different roles of the adults in the building give our tree, give our students a different approach to the same goal in order to give as well-rounded of a scenario as possible. We cannot ignore the language development because we don't have time, or because they don't know their letters yet, or because it's not in the curriculum. We have to include English language development instruction. It's not just the federal law, it's necessary. And why we're struggling so much and why students are struggling so much is that English language development instruction has been kind of squashed down by curriculum instruction. And if they're not partnered up well and planned well, then we know all the research behind oral language development as the foundation for literacy skills. Right? Your kindergarten English speakers have 5-year head start on your kindergarten English learners, beginning English learners, in having the foundation of oral language in English that they need to read. They're not going to close that gap if we don't have specific targeted focus there. So I really want to help all teachers, all schools, get to a place where you feel like you are doing justice to the curriculum, you are providing students with support, and part of that support is that they have dedicated English language development. Now, that doesn't mean they have to be pulled out. There are ways that we've been talking about throughout this blog series that we can combine that content instruction and the language instruction, but it takes growing your expertise in functional language planning in order for you to do it efficiently and effectively so that it does create results, right? We can throw, what is the term, like just throwing the spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. We can do a lot of that. Or we can learn how to use functional language planning to get very targeted, very explicit, and get the biggest bang for our buck in each and every lesson for language development and content development. One of the ways that we go about doing this through systemic functional linguistics is what's known as the teaching and learning cycle. It comes out of language development research out of Australia. If you're interested in the research background, shoot me a note, send me an email. Set up a time to meet via Calendly, and I'd be happy to share the ins and outs. But just to get to the big picture for blog purposes, it's that there is a lot of research behind how students develop literacy in a first language, but especially in a second language. So let's go through this real quickly. Plan with the end in mind. I need to know where you're going with this content curriculum. I'm the ELD person, content teacher. I need to know what your end goal is. By the end of this, students need to be able to tell me what. From there, I think, okay, they may have a gap in background knowledge because they're a newcomer in 5th grade and they didn't have, the last math unit or social studies from 3rd grade or whatever it may be. So think about building that knowledge. Like, what else can we do? Deconstruct text with the language lens. I'm going to look at the materials. I'm going to look at the assessment. I'm going to look at the reading, the read aloud that the teacher's doing. I'm going to look for patterns of language that my student needs to understand and be able to work with in order to make the most of this. Then as we move into 4, here's where the ELD teacher can take a different twist in the literacy. Instead of continuing to teach the same things that students aren't getting and that data keeps coming back red and the Dibbles machine wants to explode along with your mind, right? You keep doing that because it's valid, and let me, ELD, do something a little different and try to mesh the two. And that's where we get into step 4, where we really start working with jointly constructed text, right? Collaborative writing, collaborative construction, whether it be the content teacher, the ELD teacher, best yet, you bring the content, I bring the language, and we create perfectly beautiful jointly created texts that include content knowledge and targeted language. Then our students can take all of that and construct text independently. And then we see how they're doing. We evaluate their language objective goals. We evaluate their literacy goal. And then we come back and go through the cycle again with a new set of goals and skills. If we aren't approaching it with meaning making in mind, the meaning making really kicks in at step 4. Step 1, 2, 3, that's our functional language planning that we need to be really tight with and an expert in. And then 4, 5, 6, those are our strategies that come with the idea of making meaning under systemic functional linguistics and the teaching and learning cycle. So I want to be able to spend more time with ELD teachers, with content teachers who are understanding this approach and wanting to learn more about functional language planning. So for the blog series, as always, like I always ask you, feel free to send me a note and tell me about what's been most valuable. What do you still have questions about? Do you want to challenge my way of thinking? I'm open to all conversation. But before we go, I want to share this opportunity with you. Right now, we are running our first cohort of the Functional Language Planning Expert Intensive. It's a 12-week program. Right now, we're about halfway through our cohort 1, and we're getting wonderful feedback, lots of aha moments, tons of incredible resources from Dr. Ruslana Westerlin, who is teaching some live and providing lots for the asynchronous content. She is a co-creator of the WIDA 2020 English Language Development Standards, so you know she knows what she's talking about, and you know that anything we talk about is aligned to standards because she would do nothing else. We also have guest speaker on Andrea Honingsfeld, well known for co-teaching guru, published many books along co-teaching, who brings that perspective as well of how we partner to do the language and content development together. This program, as I said, is 12 weeks. We alternate between a week where we meet live via Zoom, either with me, with Ruslana, as we go, and then in between there are weeks where it's asynchronous content of recordings from me, recordings from Andrea, recordings from Ruslana that you can do that are more self-paced. It's about a 2-hour per week commitment. We try to be very reasonable. And it's a lot of information, so you really have to be ready to focus and learn. It's not one of those programs where you can just casually listen to the video while you're cooking dinner and, do a little reflection at the end and get credit. This expert intensive is really meant to move your practice, to transform the way you plan and the way you think about teaching language in those co-teach push-in type environments, and also how you support that student to continue to grow in language and the necessary skills if you're pulling them out. It takes some time and focus and learning and practice. And what I love most about our cohorts is the collaboration. We have groups of people that are from the same district, and we have individuals who are from their own district, and they all come together and they share their experiences that are amazingly similar across the country. And they learn from each other, and they try things and they tell each other. It's a wonderfully collaborative supportive environment. Within that, each individual participant gets at least 3 one-on-one coaching sessions with me. Just earlier today, got on Zoom and had a coaching session with one of the teachers, which kind of prompted some of what went into the blog today. So getting into what is going on, and let's grow your expertise and let's make it happen. Our next cohort runs for the summer is June 2nd to August 23rd. We will also have a fall cohort if you need to plan a little further ahead that starts in September. If you want more information about the summer cohort or the fall cohort, please email me at info@englishlearnerportal.com, and I'll also put a button on this blog where you can download more information to read and review. I am certain that the more teachers we get feeling comfortable with functional language planning and using well-built planning tools where they can co-plan quickly and effectively, we'll see a shift. I'd love to know your thinking about a switch to systemic functional linguistics. Send me a note.